Hi there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so happy to have you, and we are thrilled to present how to create really good automated emails. I'm Abby Heeman, Senior Product Marketing Manager at GetResponse, and super happy to have Matthew Smith with us today, the founder of Really Good Emails. And so today we're going to just take about 1 hour. That should be enough time to go through the presentation, show you how to build a few emails, and then have a live Q&A session at the end. And there will be a recording, so definitely keep your eyes peeled to your inboxes, and we will be sharing the recording hopefully tomorrow. And we're going to just start out with Matthew. He's going to show you some examples and share some best practices, mistakes to avoid, and generally introduce what an email design system is. He'll show you some good examples of automated emails, and then we're going to go ahead and build an email sequence from scratch using a design system. So I'll be building 3 emails for you, and then we're going to go ahead and have the live Q&A session. So without further delay, let's go ahead and pass it over to Matthew.
Hey everyone, it's fantastic to be here today. I'll let you read these slides later and learn a little bit about me, but I am just stoked to be here. I love talking about email. I never thought I would, but it's like I became a designer, and then I got into the web, and then I saw how important email was to really connect with customers, and this became the way that I wanted to be able to really connect with my skills and be effective on the internet. And so I started Really Good Emails, and here we are. This is great. So thanks for joining us today. It's going to be awesome. I love working with GetResponse. I'm super excited about the connection that we have between Really Good Emails and GetResponse. So let's move into creating automated emails. All right, so what I want to do is I want to get into how you get started. Like, how do you understand what is, the thing that you really want to work on? And first is I want to think through, like, understand what sucks for your customer. Like, this is the foundation. When you understand really the problem that you're facing and your customers are facing, you're able to actually start articulating a message that means something to them. When you don't have a message that actually connects and means something to them, then you are essentially missing the mark. You're talking about you're being narcissistic. That's not what you're looking for, right? Like, you want to solve a problem for them and get a job done for them. One way I like to think about this is, what is my customer hiring this email to do for them? Like, what would they pay? Time? Money? Like, what would they pay for the solution you're offering? And if that's not clear, that's a problem. So get clear with that. Next is ask what the job to be done is, right? So this is similar, but like, first you define the problem, and then you define the solution, right? So the job to be done might be, my customer, needs, high fashion, more fashion, latest up-to-date fashion. So the job to be done is to make sure that they have not only the fashion that is new, that is fresh, but also that is specific to them. Per their segment or the way that they've been focused. Or the job to be done is to give them a receipt for the product that they bought, and to make that really clear, and to let them know when it will arrive, and to give them a next step, or, hey, there's still time to add to your cart. We're going to ship this on Thursday, but would you like anything to add before that? See, like, you just get the job to be done, you focus, and you provide value to that customer. That's going to keep them coming back. Next, create a hypothesis about how your job will help the thing suck less and improve their lives, right? If you know that hypothesis, okay, my hypothesis is that this fashion email with this relevant, up-to-date, unique, new fashion will really help that customer to feel more connected to their fashion lives, and that they will buy more products if we organize our information in this way and we solve this job to be done for them. Come up with specific hypothesis about what you want that email to do, and then do your research on how others are solving that problem, right? So you've got your problem, you've got your job to be done, you've got your hypothesis about how that job will help, and then you do your research on how others are solving that problem. Where do you do that? Really Good Emails. No better place on the internet to do that. It's not just my opinion. It's just, we've got more emails that are curated than anybody else. Obviously, go check out some other stuff on Pinterest, look around for sure. We have a specific opinion about a complete package of what makes a really good email. There are some emails out there that don't have the same quality of design, but they have good strategy, or sometimes emails that have really good design out there that lack good strategy, but you can be creative and bring those two together. So definitely, look at really good emails, but also other places. Figure out how others are solving that problem so that you can jump off from where they started and make it more appropriate for you, but you don't have to solve it in a black box. Next, create a priority guide for what goes into all the communication. That includes email, SMS, and site, and then develop a prototype from it. So a priority guide is similar to a wireframe, but it's more content focused. Wireframe is like, where does the information go? Priority guide is, what is the critical information that has to be in this email for the job to be done? And you prioritize that information before you start designing. And so get that into, a focused place. And what's cool is you can develop a prototype before you even start designing. And that prototype ends up sort of being a priority guide, wireframe, and you can put it in front of a customer. You can put it in front of people that would be able to give you a response of, yes, this is solving that problem. I'm moving toward a solution on that hypothesis I have. Then, once you've tested it a little bit with a couple of customers, and then again, because it's a prototype, it can be a clickable Figma prototype, InVision prototype, it can be paper. Anything. Just get that in front of people. Get some reaction to it, and then design and prototype your email flow. Now, this is if you're starting from scratch. Obviously, if you already have an email design system, you already have emails out in the go. It might be faster just to come up with an email using that system very quickly in code, and then get it out to people to test. Ideally, not just your entire audience. Segment or print it or test it in a prototype environment before you send it out. But in this case, from scratch, design and prototype your email flow. So not just that one email, but the entire thing. Like, how did the customer get put into a segment to receive this email? Did they buy something? Did they click on something? Did they sign up for something? Now they get this email. What do they do from there? And you want to review the entire flow as a conversation. Think about it relationally. Bring it out of context of technology and bring it into the relationship, and you will see if it feels right and if it feels connecting. You know this already because of the ways that you relate to your friends and family and loved ones. And so think about this relationally, and you'll see things really dynamically shift. Next, test your flow internally or with customers, right? So you've got your flow, you've got the way that it moves, you've got this relational dynamic. Test it. See if you can, test it with a small segment, get some internal, get people to take action and receive the email and see if that feels right, if it is achieving the desired results that you've set up in your hypothesis. Next, document your flow and your findings, and start sending it out, see what happens, and adjust your hypothesis. So it turns out people, didn't buy the product as much as we wanted. They did buy these other products, or they did click this other CTA. And so we're going to adjust the email and, sort of refocus the layout or the priority guide to more adequately meet the needs of the customer. Or maybe we misunderstood the problem. Like you can go back through your entire flow if you're not getting the results you're looking for. Lastly, or close to last here, is create a design system from your emails. This is a powerful tool that we'll get into in a little bit, but the incredible quality of being able to have your design already solved primarily so that you're filling in with content and you're moving faster, you're using less resources. It's exciting. Then implement those designs into components and templates. This is, again, part of an email design system, but when instead of having to do every single email as its own brand new thing, learn from what is happening in web design and in product design, and bring your emails into a design system. I recommend using like Taxi for email is a great tool that works with all the different ESPs, and I think would work fantastic with GetResponse. And then you're able to have your design system all laid out. Your marketing team is able to leverage that tool and get into faster and faster flows, because you already have components that then can be assembled into templates. It's like Legos. It's awesome. And send. Cool. So now that you've got everything developed, you've got everything in your flow, you've tested, this is the time to start sending to everybody. Now, as a small team, you may not be able to do every piece in this flow fully or amplified, but you can do a scrappy version of it. I like to say that quality does not have to change, but we can change we can turn a dial from scrappy to thorough. You know, where scrappy is like one person playing guitar at a bar, cool Led Zeppelin covers, right? Like that's gonna be freaking amazing, and that probably costs $500, right? Versus you can have an orchestra book like a giant theater, and you can have them playing Led Zeppelin covers, and that could be $600,000 in New York if you book it for, you know, several weeks, and like you have different shows, and that's an extremely thorough experience. That's a huge range, but both can be great experiences. Same with you. When you're small and scrappy, there's still a way to achieve some of these results. And feel free to hit me up at Whale if you have any questions. Sweet. And don't forget to measure, test, and optimize. So each time that you send, watch what's happening and then adjust. And, you know, to be honest, like at Really Good Emails, we have a very small team. And this is still not our main business. All of us have full-time jobs, and we're doing this on the side. And we're having a lot of fun building a company, but it's hard to do measure, testing, and optimization when you have a small team. So we get it. And some of you have bigger teams and well-funded teams, and you can do more. But we can all stick together and keep improving our emails. A couple of mistakes to avoid in this process. My suggestion is always do less better. I love this quote from Dieter Rams, who was a designer at Braun. And if you know Braun's, B-R-A-U-N, if you know their line of products, they're just incredibly well designed, and they are essential, right? So the idea is to scale your scope back to the essential job to be done and do just that. Most of the emails that we get at Really Good Emails, basically I have to deny them from being accepted into the main feed because they're too busy. There's too many grid points. There's too many different text styles. The email is too busy, and so it's not effective in getting its job done. There's too many CTA colors. Essentially, the email itself is just a mess, and it's too much. And so it's a little bit like coming to a customer with a conversation, and you haven't gotten your notes together, and you're just talking all over the place, and they don't actually remember what you said. So instead, you got to get organized, and you can do that better when there's fewer things. And a priority guide that we were talking about a minute ago will really help you do that. Next is do some design golf to get down to those lowest priority things, or least number of differences, or the most priority things. So the idea is to get the lowest score of differences in your design. It's something that I kind of coined, this idea of design golf. I don't know anybody else who ever used it, so I'd like to be the guy who came up with this. But it's like in golf, you're looking for the lowest score, right? So in design golf, you're looking for the lowest number of differences in your design. So how many points of grid? So if you have a left alignment, do all the things align on the left, or are they like different points? Do we have center as well? How many different types of fonts are we using, or typography? How many different colors are we using? And you have to ask yourself, is that new thing, that second font, that fourth font, is it doing a specific job for the customer? If not, remove it. like go back to something simpler. And you have to make sure that every single difference is doing a job. Otherwise, it's just fluff and it's getting in the way of the job of the email. Cool. A couple of emails to go through that I think have some typical problems that I would recommend that you be aware of. My friends at Upplers, they do great work, and I'm sure these emails actually perform reasonably well. These are design-oriented challenges that I think make it harder for people to read your content. And this is too much centered text. So it's not terrible here. It could be worse, and I do see it worse. One of the things that makes it okay is that this text is actually a little bit bigger than your average tiny text that you get in a lot of emails, and they are sticking to centered text, which I think is helpful. But you can read a book called The Elements of Typographical Style, or you can read a book called Web Typography by Richard Rudder. And either of those will teach you about some typographical rules. The center of all of the center of all of design is text, right? Like is communication. Now, there are designs that are not text, but most of design is about taking text and making it readable, digestible, so that somebody can do something with it. And this is no different. So when you have too much centered text, it makes it hard to scan. So there's a lot of articles out there. You can check out Nielsen Group. They write about it. The typographical rules are there for a reason. So instead, what you can do in a situation like this is try, if you're going to do centered aligned text, try and keep it to 3 lines or less, and make your text big and plenty of leading or line height between lines. Not so much that it starts to look like separate lines, but just reduce your amount of text that you're putting in centered. So this isn't bad, but it's something to be aware of. This is right on the edge. Next, we had some friends submit this email, and we actually accepted it because there's a lot of good things that are happening in this email. It's very clear, like nice big CTAs, etc. But one of the things I found that was a little bit jarring is you're leading with this really interesting image up here, but you're breaking it up with this. I think this is probably done using a pre-header, but I don't know that it's really serving the audience that well. Why not put this text in the photograph, or make this text black so that it doesn't add too much confusion and difference up here? Next is you get to help for heroes here. That is a centered text. So centered, left, centered is it adds a lot of back and forth. Then some really nice, good sized text that is left aligned, and that works. But then coming over here, we go centered again, and then we have this big block. It's just a lot. Now again, this is an email that we accepted. It was right on the line. But the number of emails that have these different points of, again, like in my design golf, what I talked about is you've got, left align, center align, center align. You've got type size 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, probably 8. You've got colors 1, 2, so that's not too bad. Oh, sorry, 1, 2, 3 for red, blue, so 4, 5 with white. So that's pushing it. Maybe there's some ways, like, why couldn't there be, like, I understand the blue is part of the brand, but I feel like in this particular email, making this blue a very dark gray, not quite black, would have been a more effective way of keeping the email feeling really unified. More white space down here would have done that. There could have been some, like this help for heroes. If there had been a way to include this as part of this left aligned section, you would reduce a a point of difference. All that sounds like crazy, like, oh, Matthew, you're nuts. There's too many different design points here. You know, how am I supposed to think about all these things? I just think, and I believe that every time that we can create email that reads really clear and succinctly, it is a way of developing trust and consistency with our customers. So from a strategy point of view, I think this email is doing a pretty good job. It checks a lot of boxes, right? Excuse me. Oops. But I think from a design point of view, it needs additional work. So it's almost there, and that's why we led it into Really Good Emails, is we felt that it had a lot of good things going for it. And next up, a classic that we get a lot is people using a brand color like this, but then they're using it for their CTAs, and it's a little bit hard to know what's a CTA and what's not. So in this case, you've got some links up here in the top. It's text without underlines. Then you come down here and you have this box that's a heading, but it's pink. And the only thing that's helping me know that this is a button is that these corners are rounded and that there's, that it's more or less centered. And again, this is a problem I see a lot where you've got, this, like, you've got a grid point centered left, centered, centered here, left here, centered, and it's just, things just feel jumbled. They don't feel organized, and things feel safer to people when they feel more at rest or organized, and they feel more consistent. It's, if you walk into a home and it's messy, that can often feel, a little bit like it's not fun or restful to be in that space. That said, also something that is too formal, too rigid can feel sterile and not cozy, right? So it's an interesting balance to try and get. But in this case with CTA colors, we go back and forth here. So I find that when people try and do stuff like this, it can really go awry. Now, this isn't the worst example that we see, but I think this is a good example of seeing, like, every time that you add, CTA color to items that aren't CTAs, you potentially create a little bit of confusion in the user. Sweet. Next up here, I love Aesop Smells. Man, they have a beautiful brand and do some neat stuff. The main thing I wanted to call out here is that these Shop Now links are really subdued. And so much so, it's a little bit hard to find. And so what I like here is they've got this nice big CTA. I would love to see these CTAs, these Shop Now links, be green or dark with an underlined green, or some way of calling out that they're part of that consistent design pattern. Now, they have a really minimal brand, and so I see why they made this choice. But, it's that balance of really creating something that feels engaging and visually interesting, while also, keeping up with your brand. So in this one, we've talked about this a couple times, but too many grid points. You can see there is, like, this text here. It's cute as heck. What a great, like, little graphic up here. But it also does add a lot of, movement and busyness. Now, centered, that works well. So if this text had been centered, I think it could have worked really well. Then these over here, there's just a couple of challenges here with, like, having these be, like, centered on the left like this. I would probably have made them left aligned. But when the email is all together, you can see that it doesn't have that sensibility of moving really clear. So a lot of these points are design points. Again, I think this email probably performs fairly well. These CTAs are nice and big and very clear, really great imagery. So these are picky design problems, but I think that they, on the whole, when you solve these problems and when you create a design system that's consistent, it really makes a difference in the way that your email is perceived. All right, so let's talk about email design systems. You need an email design system if you're redesigning and rebuilding the same things over and over, your emails are inconsistent, it takes weeks or months to go from an idea to send, and every email in your stack requires a full team. Like, think about how many people have to touch your emails. Do you always have to have a designer and developer? Do you always have to have somebody in strategy? Do you always have to have leadership? Do you always have to have somebody in marketing? When you begin to use an email design system, you're using component blocks consistently, and you're able to put in unique content into those component blocks because it's a heading followed by a subheading followed by a CTA followed by a graphic, or you break them up into different groups, right? Like, that kind of arrangement helps people, be able to make different choices. Now, these might be, for instance, this little graphic here is helpful. This might be 3 components that you can test or use in different environments. But of course, there's all kinds of different components that can be developed. And then once they're designed and developed, it's sort of set it and forget it. Now your marketing team or your writers can just go and make it and get it done. You no longer need to bring in design and development on every single email. And that's the power of a good design system. It's like having a set of Legos that you can assemble, reassemble, move around, and it's always going to equal something fantastic, right? It's just moving the Legos around rather than having to redo and rethink, your entire Lego set from the get-go. We get to design and build once, we reuse it infinite times, eliminate inconsistencies, increase speed from idea to send, and use your team resources more wisely. Highly recommend it. I think we're on to examples of automated emails from the rest of the GetResponse team. All right, have a wonderful day. Really enjoying being here on this webinar with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matthew. It was great to hear those tips and hear actually how to get started and what to avoid whenever designing our automated emails. Before we dive in and actually start building some emails, I'll show you just a couple quick examples of some automated emails we really like. We can see this in this example from Brightly. These are some kind of interesting inspirations to look at for the welcome messages. So the emails that you can actually send out when somebody first joins your list. Airtable had also a really cool series that we liked. We liked seeing the consistent branding, super recognizable layouts and designs, but still just very simple and easy to digest. Everlane, for kind of an e-commerce example, also we really liked their automated version, so less of that kind of like, follow-up and educational, but this is, a good example of some cool transactional emails that are, automatically sent whenever you make a purchase or if you actually, have abandoned an order or something like that. And I can also quickly let you know that we've actually curated in really good emails a collection of these examples here and even more. So I can show you that here. So I've got Abby's really good automated emails collection that I'm always adding things to. So you'll see, whenever you're checking out really good emails, these examples that we've included on the presentation for today's webinar, but also more. And I'll keep adding to them every time I find good examples. So you can certainly search for this collection as well if you're interested in that. And you can see all the time more good automated emails that we're adding to that. All right, now let's get building. Let's see how to actually use an email design system to go ahead and create some really good looking emails really fast. So here we are actually in the GetResponse automation creator. So this is just an example of a super simple workflow that we can use to automatically send out our emails whenever someone signs up. So whenever someone first signs up for our bootcamp list, we will immediately send them a welcome message. Then we'll wait for a couple of days. We'll send them some, follow-up educational information. And then let's say 2 days later, we send some kind of promotional offer, what we think they may be interested in. Of course, the beauty of marketing automation is that you can really, create any number of scenarios or journeys that you want your new subscribers or new customers to go through. For the purpose of this webinar to show you how to build these 3 messages really fast, we'll keep it super simple. But of course, very commonly, whenever you are, using automation to send your messages, you're also using other conditions or checking to see how your contacts engage with those messages and then trigger follow-up content based on their engagement. So that's kind of what's going on here with all these different conditions and different actions and filters you have within marketing automation. But for this webinar, we'll just keep it super simple and just send out a series of messages, after someone signs up with some delays in between. And so let's go ahead and see how we can build our welcome message. So we're actually going to choose to create a new message. And then we just want to give it a quick name so we can find it later. So this is just the welcome, the subject line, thanks so much for joining us. And a little preview text here, here's what's next or something like that. Now we want to just design our message. And something I can just quickly point out before we actually start building is that if you don't already have some templates designed, maybe that you've worked with a designer on, or you've used them previously and that's what you would like to use as the base of what we can call like your design system, I would highly recommend to browse through these existing pre-designed messages and actually go ahead and just save elements of them that you like, that you can customize to match your branding and your style, and then use them again and again, and start building your own system based on these pre-designed, pre-configured elements in the templates, because these are actually, formatted, have the right spacing and padding, so that kind of is just done for you, and you can just, change up the colors or things like that, and then save these elements and use them whenever you're quickly building your own messages. So you could do that from these kind of pre-designed ones. You can also start with the blank templates and these layouts, and even just save elements of the layouts that you'd like to use again in your messages. So that's how I would recommend getting started with your design system if you haven't yet, if you don't already have templates and designs that you would like to use and save those elements. So I'm actually going to start with a blank template here, and we can see how to build that. So to start us off, I'm just going to quickly format this section, this header section here, because the way I have my elements configured already, I don't actually need some of this formatted in this way. So I'll just quickly change the view online link to be centered, and I actually don't want the logo included here because it'll be in my header that I already have saved, which you'll be able to see in just a minute. And so these are actually saved as what's called my blocks. So anytime you save an element, within your message template, it's this little icon here. So you can save sections, you can save, single elements themselves, and that's how you actually use them again as your blocks. And so I have quite a lot of blocks here that I have just created by saving different elements of templates that I liked and that I think would work for this email series. So it makes it a lot faster for me, and I don't have to reformat all of these, messages. They're basically ready to go, and I just put them together like pieces of a puzzle. One thing that I will use in every single one of these templates is the same footer here. So I can actually start at the bottom. So this is a section that I'm going to put at the bottom of every message that I use, because I always want to make sure to go ahead and offer a link to my website and also to different, icons that are already linked, we can say, to my social media profiles. But now I can go ahead and build the rest of my message. I'm going to go ahead and delete this section here because I won't need it. And I'll start from the top. And I have a block that's called like H1, so like for a header. And so I can go ahead and just search for that, because you can name them and then search for them. Makes it a lot easier if you can recall, because probably you would name them based on, obviously what's inside or where you want to use them. So that would make it just faster. And so this is where, for example, I know I pretty much will always have my logo up top and then this text that I could customize, but thankfully in this example it works well. And now it's just about building all the blocks. But you'll see whenever you select the section or the block, you can still customize it further if you need to, but that's kind of the beauty of it, is that it already has all of these kind of, borders selected for me. I don't have to go do that again. And now I'll just search for the next element. And I like for my welcome messages to have kind of a nice fun design, kind of maybe a little bit whimsical. So a GIF is a good way to achieve that, but of course one that's a little bit, let's say, light, like a light GIF. You don't want it to be too heavy, take too long to load. So this kind of like animation, so very small animation that repeats, in this kind of GIF format, I would say is a really cool way to get started with that. And so now I want to just go ahead and find kind of the body section for my message. So this is, different elements I could go ahead and look for that I know I have, but let me actually go ahead and search for it, because I remember I had something about text. I think it was text with a button section. Exactly. So I think it was maybe this one. So I'm going to put that underneath. So this is a good looking first section here. Looking here. Okay, I'll cut that. Okay, so this is a good looking first section for my message. And so this is where, if you were building it, for a different message, you can just change up the copy you used from the message that you saved this from, and it would save you a lot of time. And so I'm going to go ahead and actually add an additional section to this email to give me a little bit of space. I want to have a space between the two sections of my email. So you just go ahead and add a section and add a little spacer here. And then I want to add just a little bit more text, a little bit more information. I could stop here. It's pretty common for welcome messages to be, pretty short and to the point, but I have a little bit more I'd like to say. And so I think I have it. This is a really good example of one I would like to recommend that you actually, if you do something like this, because I think it's cool to actually, oops, I had to move this section here. Put that in between them. Cool, there. Because I think sometimes it looks nice to actually use emojis or little icons instead of standard bullet points, but they take kind of a minute to set up and to format the spacing right. So I'd say once you did that and it worked, it's a perfect candidate to save actually as a block for you to easily reuse it. And you could change the emoji out if you wanted to change it up, but then it honors all that same spacing. And so that's basically it. This could be our welcome message. It looks really good to go. Kind of two sections. There's a little bit of a spacer here. And so we can move on and go to our next message. So we've already configured our name and subject line, so we can just go ahead and finish this. All right, so now we're ready to build our second message. So this will be our educational follow-up message. So we'll go ahead and create a new one here again. And we can name this one, just content follow-up. So it's good to send over some information next that just kind of, builds up on what you've kind of offered up whenever they signed up for you, and just relevant, content, educational information that they would find helpful. So not really getting too heavy in your promotional offers just yet. And so we can just call this like our best tips, and then preview text like, how we can help you. Something like this. Now let's go design our message yet again. So we can remember we can start from a blank template because we'll be able to use some of our already saved elements that we'll be using again and again for all of our messages. So, but really quick, I do need to configure this one just one more time here. And go ahead and center it. And we can go ahead and remove our logo because we know we're always using that logo in our first little block here. And so this one, I already had it saved as, for example, I think I called it like an educational follow-up header. So we can see what I've got. Yeah, here we go. But you can see this looks exactly like the header basically that we used in this welcome message. This was just an example where the text was already correct and ready to go, so it saves me even more time. But this is a prime example of where that H1, a welcome message header, would be perfect, and I could use it again and again if all I need is a logo and my top header text to be this font and this bold. But this has a little bit more follow-up information here. And then, as usual, I put a graphic underneath. And so I can just go ahead and find my block that I am using for this graphic here. And it's already formatted with the section that I need it. So I think this one was actually the brainstorm. That's what I had it as. Yeah, brainstorm graphic, or the section. And so you can see here, I've often saved it as a section itself rather than just the graphic, but I also have the graphic saved in case I want to use it. And that's because for this email series, I like to have this kind of a border. And so the borders are already configured, because if I didn't have it already, kind of saved and I had to keep building this, I'd have to keep saving and editing this little section to have this border with the right font color and, the right weight for this line. So it just saves me a lot of time. If I know for this series I wanted to go ahead and have these kind of border designs, I could go ahead and just save things as sections, so they'll already have that saved, and configured on them, which saves you clicks and time. And so now we just want to add a CTA underneath the graphic. So a button here. So since this is kind of like an educational follow-up, usually it could be, download the ebook for free or go to this blog post, whatever basically you're referring to in the first section here. And now I want to go ahead and do that thing where I actually put a bit of a space in between these sections here. And so you just need to go to the section area and add a spacer, or add a section, and then you add a spacer to it. So it just puts a little bit of a, kind of a break for your eye between the sections that we're using and creating with these borders. And then I want to go ahead and do something else that I think is really helpful using these saved blocks for, is another kind of way to actually show the kind of, a different way to show bullets. And it's again kind of using like a graphic element. In this case, instead of an emoji, it's basically like an icon. And oops, I did that thing again with our spacer in our new section here. I keep accidentally not putting them in between. Cool, there we go. So this just puts that little break there. And so this is a cool example of, instead of just using like a bullet point, just your standard, text bullet points, you can actually kind of break it up and show it vertically with different sections and using an icon. But again, that would just take a few bits, a few moments to set it up, to actually format it properly. So you can just save them as sections and just use them again. So I think it's a really cool way to do that. And it just looks nice, and is, a little bit more interesting, let's say, than just your standard kind of, bullets. And so I think we had one more I have here. I'm just scrolling sometimes here, and then there's like this. And so I think it just looks a little bit more visually appealing. There's different, like it's already, hyperlinked here, one of the texts. That could save you some time as well. You don't have to format that. You just change your links out. And so that's something I would definitely recommend as well. And then we had just a bit more details in this section. So I'm going to do one more time, add one more section in between here, and put in our spacer. And then this is a nice block that I have saved that I would be using probably quite frequently, and also able to change the color on it. So I have this like blue box section, because so far you can see usually I'm using, white backgrounds and actually the blue button, which, it's also a good idea to save your button stylings as well as standalone elements. But then this is like kind of, inverting it basically and using my design styling of blue and yellow. But this would be a cool one where you could, just easily change up the colors, but you have the formatting set up right. And then, of course, to round it out, we know we have our social media icons that we will use in every single of our emails. So this is an example of one we'll just use again and again. And so this is our follow-up message. So this is quite cool. It helped us having kind of these different elements saved. And then, for future messages that I'm sending, I will be using, those different vertical bullet points again and again. Maybe just using one of them, but in changing the text out. And next, I just want to actually go ahead and edit my workflow again really quick. I think I forgot to save that. So we'll actually just add in another wait, because we need to send one more message here. In 2 days, then I want to actually send my final kind of promotional message. Of course, this should never be the final message you ever send to your contacts, but this is just what we'll have time to show today, 3 messages, and now we can kind of do a bit of a more promotional offer. And so we can call this kind of like our promotional offer. And, let us solve that problem. So, it's a good idea to actually, formulate your subject lines to actually be specific to how you actually help solve these problems or are the solution that they need. Here's why you'll love it. And now we just want to design our final message. Again, going to our blank template and using our saved elements. So one more time, editing this bit here, because these can't be saved, as actual elements and blocks, because they are required to be in each email that you send. And so you do just have to kind of play with that one whenever if you want to customize it from what it already is. And now let's go ahead and we've got some interesting graphics here. So I think this was the promotional section header. Let's see, yeah, here we go. But again, this is quite similar to the other headers I've been using, but this one just, for example, has a button here at the top, within this content rather than the graphic. So we're just slightly changing it up here. And so we want to add the CTA, as high as we can for those promo offers. And then we can go ahead and just add our graphic underneath the button itself. And this is going to be pretty simple. So this should hopefully be enough, to get them interested in what you're offering. But just in case it's not, and people actually do continue to scroll on, and you can add a little bit more information. We're going to add one more of these sections in between to give a little bit of space, and then have a little bit more content, to describe our offer in a bit more detail. So this one, I believe we were calling it like section text. So this is just a little bit different than something we've been doing. So let me try to get it underneath my section here. There we go. I managed this time. Cool. So just a little bit more details about what it is that you're offering. A little bit more details here. And then this is another one that I think would be good to use in other details. So you could, change out the graphic here. But these would just take a bit of time to set up, in the future with your different, subheadlines and details, detailed text there. So this could be a little bit more information for you to use. And then we just need one more CTA, which I believe is actually this one here. So you added your CTA up here to hopefully get them to click, right from, what it is that you've explained in the benefits here, and then here at the bottom as well after you've given a bit more details. And the only thing we need now is our standard social media icons that we put at the bottom. Just put it underneath there. Cool. So that looks good. All right, so these are our 3 emails. So we can go ahead and move on. And technically we have built 3 emails. Now I know, you may be thinking, well, Abby, you had all of these elements already saved, which is indeed true, but that's the whole point of it basically. So now when I'm wanting to create messages, 4, 5, 6 later on, I can actually go ahead and just start, moving and using different elements of these emails. And mixing and matching them. I had these, I knew how I wanted them to be set up specifically, and now moving forward I can just use different sections, maybe take away some of the borders that I used and just use some of the elements themselves, and I can quickly just show you what it's looking like, just give you a quick preview of the messages. So I'll just drag them over here so you can see them, what they're looking like in our preview here. So here's our welcome message. It looks really nice. Here's what it looks like for us to educate our new signups and then to promote our particular offer as well. So without any further delay, let's get into our Q&A session.